Ah, Scream 7. Never has a film so boring on screen produced so much drama off screen. Yes, I now thought I was done talking about Scream 7, that miserable bastardization of my favourite horror franchise. But I do feel compelled to talk about something again involving Scream 7. It's because Melissa Barreras came out and gave her thoughts. She was doing an interview, I think, with Variety, which is kind of ironic because they were one of the ones kind of always going against her as well once when she got fired. And it was one writer in particular, and the same writer did the same to Rachel Zegler after Snow White. So whatever. But just because one writer's like that at one place doesn't mean all of them are. So whatever. But I digress. So she's given her thoughts on Scream 7 and things like that. And there's a few interesting quotes and that comments here, so I'd go into them. Now, keep in mind, I am a Melissa Barrera supporter. I think she's great. I'll be honest with you, I think she's a much better actress than Neve Campbell. I've watched so much of Melissa Barrera's projects, whereas I swear to God, only Scream is, other than Skyscraper, and I forgot about this. I had to look that up to see it, just to see if I'd seen any other Neve Campbell projects, and the only other one I'd seen is Skyscraper, and that's because The Rock's in it. So, you know, nothing against her. She's got other stuff and all that. I've never seen The Craft, but it's got its fan base. So, just saying. But Melissa Barrera, I watch a lot of her projects. She's great. Recently watched The Copenhagen Test, which I thought she was really good in. Didn't think the show was that great. I thought it was pretty average, and mainly because of sloppy pacing. But overall, yeah, she was good in it. I've seen a lot of her other films. Of course, Abigail's a great horror film. So, we'll go into this, right? She was asked about if she thinks that like the actors uh, that went in the film are scabs, essentially like cross at the picket line type thing. Scab for stab. How's that for ironic? Anyway, never mind, because, well, to be honest, Scream 7 is practically a stab film. It's burial. But at least the stab films in the clips look kind of ironically funny, whereas Scream 7 was just a miserable bore fest. But whatever. I don't want to be a miserable bore fest by going on about that too much, but here we go. Um, but she says, yeah, they are, basically. And then basically says they have to live with that themselves. So, one thing, I'll always give massive credit to Melissa Barrera for this. She is authentic. And a day and age of so much performative social media, just from ordinary people as well, never mind celebrities. You've got about, and speaking of which, Billie Eilish has a concert film out this week. She's banging on about, you can't be you can't love animals, and not be a vegetarian and all that. And then she's the one doing she's supposed to be pro-Palestine, but apparently Justin Bieber's a raging Zionist, and she was doing shows with him. Okay, whatever. Nice to see you sticking to your guns there. And also as well, she's like always moaning about capitalism as well. And then she turns around and does a film with James Cameron, like one of the biggest billionaires in the world. It's just like, okay, you're hoping that we don't notice this, but okay. Another one for you, Olivia Rodrigo. Apparently, she liked a post saying she didn't come to the Met Gala the other day because it's something to do with Jeff Bezos, the Amazon dude. But lo and behold, doesn't she have an Amazon exclusive that you can only get through Amazon coming out for her new album? Okay, then. It is what it is, I suppose. But, back to the matter at hand. I've always said Melissa Barrera, she shoots from the hip, she's honest. And she said what she really feels here. And then I think the interviewer knew that and was trying to probe it out of her to get a more sensationalist headline and a much more interesting interview than rather than the normal PR pish, basically. And he got it, or she got it. I don't know if it was a he or a she that did the interview. I don't know if there's a video out for it. I know it's in print. But no, she basically does say that there are scabs. And but seemingly the interviewer says, like, but now, so I'll stay on this point as well, first of all. I appreciate her shooting from the hip. And if she was inauthentic, just said, no, it's cool, whatever. They all went and did their thing. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you can understand her being hurt by it because she was treated pretty appallingly by Spyglass there. So the production company behind Scream. And if other people didn't stick by her, you're sort of like, well, fuck you, basically. And she's essentially saying that. Well, she didn't say fuck you, but essentially she is saying that by doing that. And you can understand why she feels that way. And of course, well, last year, the previous film as well, Nev Campbell didn't come back because of a pay dispute and all that stuff. So everyone else still came back. Some people have used that as an example. I can see why, but I think somebody choosing not to come back, and that's Nev Campbell's prerogative, nothing bad one way or the other against it. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't miss her in Scream 6. That's actually my favourite of the franchise, but there you go. But see, that's one thing, but somebody who's legitimately been fired, treated appallingly, and tried to get blackballed. Let's not forget this. They did try to smear her name and get her blackballed. Melissa Barrera, I'm talking about. No, so she would never work again, which is backfiring. We'll get to that. But so no, you can understand why she's hurting now. On the flip side, I can understand why the actors take the jobs. I mean, a lot of these people probably aren't that rich. I know you could say, oh, they are, but actors and all this, yeah, they're most of them aren't multi-millionaires and all that. I mean, Courtney Cox, she might be, and to be honest, apparently Courtney Cox liked this article, but then I seen somebody on Twitter saying that Spyglass must have told her to unlike it, so maybe she liked it by accident and didn't know what was being said in it. But Courtney Cox has liked Melissa Barrera's stuff before, after the firing, and once replied under her. So I think Courtney Cox does actually like Melissa for whether Melissa likes her back after this, who knows? Quite possibly not. So, there's that. But some of the younger ones as well with that, like I see the one like Mason Gooden and Jasmine Savoy Brown coming back. The two boring ones from the core four. Let's be honest. But no, to be fair, Jasmine Savoy Brown was quite good in the first two that she was in, but her shtick had really just went tits up by the time it went to the seventh film. But I can sort of see that. And talk about performative activism. In the run up to Scream 7 coming out, I seen a quote when she was like, well, I've gave my character they, them pronouns that is never mentioned in the film. I'm telling you, they never mentioned that at all in the film. And if they did, maybe it's because I lost concentration and never noticed it because I was so fucking bored. That's quite possible. I'm not going to lie. So, there's that. So, and then, and I did see, I seen a YouTube video where a roundup with some of the Scream 6, when Scream 6 was coming out with all the cast members and things like that. And I can't remember what it was, but she did come across as kind of performative and kind of all for these causes and all that. So if you would think if she's up for all for these causes, she would be the one to maybe stick by her co-star, but well, never mind. So, and by the way, Scary Movie 6, when you've got that trailer, this is why it's so perfect. I mentioned her going on about the pronouns. Obviously, it's the parried in the subway scene, which was her character as well in that. And then when she's getting stabbed, it's like they're shouting, "They're stabbing her!" And she's like, "Actually, no, my pronouns are they, them." I do wonder if the makers of this film saw that interview, because it's a hell of a coincidence, and it could be a coincidence. But the interview was, of course, a few weeks before Scream came out. But then these parody films do have quite quick turnarounds. They could easily add something like that in there. Although, to be fair, I think they probably were going to put something like that in there anyway. And now it's just, if you know about her saying that, that's just all the more perfect. By the way, I have no issue with anyone saying that if they want to use their pronouns, exactly, you can do what you want. Some people like to mock people that do that. Hey, live and let live. I'll respect everyone's pronouns, except Ezra Miller. Fuck him. But still, these you've got all that, and on the one hand, I do see that some of them really do need the work and things like that. And you've got McKenna Grace coming up. She's been in a load of things. Of course, she's going to be Daphne in the Scooby Doo Netflix series. So she's very talented as well. So you get a chance and you're up and coming. One of these big franchises, you're just like, of course, she's in Hunger Games as well. You're going to take it. It's like, I can see that, but I definitely see why Melissa would feel incredibly hurt by that as well. Now, she also mentions as well, she does mention something that exactly what I've been saying, was that film was just a full, they had no choice but to go down the full-blown nostalgia bait route. And absolutely, that is exactly what this is. They all bringing in the way they brought in not Billy Loomis, Stu Mocker was Matthew Lillard done a great job with this. And this is something, by the way, shame on me. I forgot to mention this in my Daredevil Born Again review. I forgot to mention that Matthew Lillard is in that show and he's very good in it. So it was actually good to see him in something that was good this year. So that's washed a bit of that taste away. So, but yeah, exactly. They're going down that route. David, the way they use David Arquette in this is just appalling. And there's one scene near the end. I've mentioned this in the spoiler thing where I'm not going into it again, but it's with like a scene involving televisions. It's just atrocious. One of the biggest piles of shit I think I've ever seen in a film. So they were just throwing the nostalgia boat at this. I know people say, well, Spider-Man No Way Home did that. Yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home was coherent and it actually used the characters in a great way. Look at like when the three Spider-Man come together. It's not just, hey, we showed up for the last fight to help you. They're on screen for nearly an hour together and they're bonding together and everything like that over past traumas and everything like that. And they're bonding as well after that, becoming like brothers. So, film does it brilliantly. Look at the way they use Norman Osborn in that film, used superbly. Contrast that with the way they use, I've mentioned Ezra Miller and that. Scream 7 is not quite as bad as The Flash, but and Flash really is rock bottom in terms of these types of films. But, they do share a lot of similarities in that sense about how badly they use nostalgia. Didn't really work for The Flash box office wise, but it did for Scream. So, we'll get to the box office. So yeah, she is right, 100%. She is right. And there's even certain scenes that are almost direct replicas of the scenes from the original. Like, and you've got your head in the hands at times while watching this. I'm just like, I'm just going to go and watch the original again because at least that's actually fucking good. But I digress. So there's other things that come across here as well. Like the interviewer says, well, Scream 7 sucked, didn't it? And Melissa Barrera's just like, yeah, it did. Just like, yeah, it did. Again, I think the interviewer was trying to get that out of her as well, just for the headlines and things like that. So again, I do 100% agree with her here. Whether people in the industry will like her coming out saying that, I don't know. Time will tell. So here's the really interesting one though, is when she said that she thinks Paramount and Spyglass falsified the box office figures. Now, I mentioned I'm a big supporter of Melissa Barrera. I think she's great. But nah, I can't agree with her on this one. And much as I'd like to, because like I said, know a lot of this film, there's no way you can do that. Because one, I believe it's a third party organization, I think they're called Rent a Track or something like that actually verifies these box office figures. So why would they do that? I mean, no, it can't be the case. And then it's not really that surprising that you throw in the nostalgia kitchen sink at a film. Oh, and by the way, they made it clear that Matthew Lillard was going to be in the film by announcing it during production. They announced David Arquette's involvement in production while it was in production. He's in the film for about 30 fucking seconds. They could easily have not put that because it wasn't in any of the trailers or anything like that. You could actually have used that as a surprise, but no, they knew fine well they needed to throw in the nostalgia kitchen sink at this thing. So, but the fact that it made a ton of money in its first, and then if you look, it had a gigantic drop in its second week. It was like 70 odd percent. Scream 8 is guaranteed, but watch what happens. This film, Scream 8, is going to make nowhere near as much as Scream 7. That I guarantee you, but I can't agree with her on the falsifying box office figures. I mean, it does sound a lot like right-wing conspiracy theorists on YouTube when they say things like, well, Avatar 2, the Disney were buying seats, and well, if a Disney film does well, it's like, well, Disney were buying seats for this. It's like, all right, why didn't they buy seats for Lightyear, which bombed? Why didn't they buy seats for, what was it called, Strange Worlds, which bombed? Maybe it would have been more beneficial to buy seats for them rather than for a film that's pretty much guaranteed to make billions. She did sound a little bit like that as well. I hate to say that. So, but no offense to Melissa, though. I've got to be honest here and say how I feel and shoot from the hip too as well. So, still a big supporter of Melissa Barrera, and it's great to see her. She's thriving as like because she's made in that Titanic, I believe it's called, which is a musical parody of. It's not a film. It's I think it's a Broadway show. I think she's been nominated for a Tony, I think it is. So, all credit to her. She's absolutely thriving in that sense. And, I think she did a performance on Good Morning America as well this week, which is a pretty big deal for that as well. So the attempt to blacklist her has not worked, and I'm glad to see it. And as well, I found it on YouTube as well and watched it. It was a fun little performance, and obviously she's a great singer and everything as well. So you've got as well that seemingly she's made her own production company in which she wants to work with other pro-Palestine people. And again, this is where I absolutely respect her immensely because she has went and done that, put her money where her mouth is, and absolutely done that. So this is where you have to give her massive respect for that there. Again, tying into how authentic she is. And to be fair, while I disagree with her on the box office things, she's saying how she feels. So fair play, we can disagree and still with that. And as well, I think she's been cast in our horror film as well. It was announced like the day after this interview. There was a lot of the Scream 7 massive stands were like, oh, well, so that's her career fucked. She's never going to work in a movie again. And then one gets announced 24 hours later. So, you've got to laugh about that. So, anyway, that's just my thoughts there. Scream 7 is just oh dear. Never have I talked so much about a film I disliked. There you have it. I've just felt it was worth talking about, diving into the talking points. But much respect to Melissa Barrera for all the things we either agree or disagree about. Much respect to her. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to listen. And one more time, fuck Scream 7.